TechAfrica News podcast from Africa for Africa. In partnership with Smart Africa. Welcome to TechAfrica News podcast. Today I have a guest. We're very happy and I looked forward a long time to finally sit together with him more than just 5 or 10 minutes during a trade show. It's Lacina Koné, Director General and CEO of Smart Africa. Hello, Lacina. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Akim. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm glad to see you here again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Lacina, Smart Africa and TechAfrica News have worked closely together over the last few years. We met during events. We talked a lot about digital transformation and how can we shape Africa's digital future. How do you see the role of industry-focused news and media platforms to drive Africa's digital transformation and really, let's say, share the narrative?
It's very important for a simple reason. Your story is only better told when it's told by yourself. And this gives us a ground for particularly our partnership with the TechAfrica News, that we tell our story ourselves. And we have the control of the narrative. We have control of the new African narrative. And that's one of the reasons in general the news industry is very important and is as much as important if it comes from our partnership, which is TechAfrica News based in Africa and Smart Africa also based in Africa. And I know we've been working in the past together for quite some time. I think it's time that we actually put some concrete actions in a structured way for communicating to our populations.
When we talk about partnership, today marks also an exciting milestone for us, TechAfrica News, and also for you, I hope. So Smart Africa joins the TechAfrica News podcast as the official partner. What makes this so exciting for you? I hope it makes it exciting.
Yeah, it is an exciting news, and particularly for me, it's also even a much more exciting news because I think we get at least now a series of a podcast between TechAfrica News and Smart Africa, and we get to tell our stories, not saying in real time, but in a better way. Particularly in this AI world, we have to be sometimes real.
Yeah.
And if you're able to produce some podcasts, and I don't know how often you want to do that or how often we want to do that, I think it's another track for us to communicate better to our member state, which are very important. And as I said, your story is better told when it's told by yourself. Yeah. So it's an exciting news for me as well.
Great. I'm happy to hear that. I like to ask people, especially people with a big track record, what drives you? Where does this passion come from for technology, for the continent? What keeps you up?
What keeps me up? It is a sense of responsibility. Sense of responsibility to future generations, because what we are living today, we owe it to the previous generations. That's the legacy. And I always said, I think I said it to yourself one time, most of the time if you're Christian, Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish, the synagogue or the mosque that you pray to, usually you go to pray, is not built by yourself. Yeah. Then fundamentally you ask yourself, why all this? It's a legacy. What are we living? What you do today, how do you want to be remembered a few years from now? Basically, that was drive me. So if we do it, and I said also like, our grandfathers, they talk the talk, our fathers walk the talk, it's for us to run the talk, because we should not have any complexity in this sophisticated world. And I think we can do better, and it's time to do better. That's what drives me.
So would you say that in order to achieve the necessary change we need for the continent, it's important that Africans take action for Africa?
Absolutely. It's very important because not only take actions for Africa, take and inform actions. You see what happened in the past, historically, certainly, and some decisions were not being taken with an informed process in mind. And this generation, this information age, information is the key. Yeah. The accessibility to the information is the key, from the youngest to the oldest in Africa. With this proliferation of the broadband internet and mobile, some people have known the internet only through mobile. Some people have not even known the traditional laptop we know CRT, the cathode ray tube monitors. No, they knew the internet through a mobile device. It basically, people are much more informed today. So the decision we make on their behalf, it better be an informed decision.
I agree. I fully agree. Let us take a step back and tell us briefly a bit more about Smart Africa, just for our audience. So, what is the idea behind it? What is the vision of Smart Africa, and what are you actually doing?
Smart Africa is the Pan-African organization created in 2013 by only that time 7 heads of the state. I will name them. It's His Excellency President Kagame of Rwanda, President Uhuru Kenyatta at that time of Kenya, President Museveni of Uganda, and President Salva Kiir of South Sudan, President Bongo of Gabon, and President Ibika of Mali, and President Blaise Compaoré of Burkina Faso. In 2013, it was during a conference in Kigali, and they said, you know what, we need to have an accelerating organizations to face the 4th industrial revolutions. The world is moving so fast. If we don't have that, we'll be left out. They came out and created today. We are 40 country covering about 1.2 billion population in Africa, with the 5 manifesto to start with, when they start back in the days. The first one being, to put the ICT at the center of a social economic development. And number 2 is to basically improve broadband connectivity. And number 3 is to use ICT for transparency and accountability. And number 4, private sector first. I mean, back in the days, 11 years ago, our head of saying private sector first, it means a lot. It means the social economic development cannot go on without the private sector. And number 5 is to basically to leverage the ICT for a digital transformation, social economic transformation by the startups and all that. Yes, that's a little story about it, about the Smart Africa and how was it created. What were the manifesto, and it's still holding. Today we have a protocol, a core of Smart Africa, which is like our constitutions. But in a nutshell, the vision of Smart Africa is to transform Africa into a single digital market.
Okay.
So it is a platform which is like a multi-stakeholder approach. That's what makes us different. Where we bring a public sector, government, we bring also private sector who are private members, and also international development partners, academia, and so on and so forth. We decide we want to do something in a specific emerging technology area for a country, and the country will be leading that. So we pilot things to check their bankability first before we actually escalate.
Okay.
So it's not a charity work, no. It's to mean real progress. Yes.
When you look back, the day when you took over as Director General, which is probably, it looks like it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. No, I remember.
So what would you describe as the biggest challenge you have seen? And what was the biggest opportunity?
The biggest challenge were the biggest opportunity. You see, it's very because when I took over, came in as a CEO, DG, and in 2019, we were only 24 country. Today we are 40. We were probably 17 employee. We are like 60 something. Not talking about even the project growth, the budget growth. The biggest challenge that time, and I will tell you, and it's still the challenge, it is the transformation of mindset. I say this and I will say it again. You are what you decided to be. You are is because of the regulatory environment that you put around yourself. As even a personal.
So you're limited at some point as well.
Absolutely, yes. You may limit yourself or you may unlock your own potential. So that the biggest challenges were the mindset transformation, because first of all, digital transformation, transformational mindset, it means how do you make your stakeholders understand everything around us will change, that the only thing that remains constant is the world change itself. Which basically means we are living in the paradigm shift where in digital transformation, you can't take the law, which are 10, 15, 20 years old, and you basically want to govern or you want to regulate the digital transformation with that. It doesn't work. It's changing. It's constantly changing. That the only thing you can survive in this digital transformation is only when your regulatory environment is adaptive. Because you see, for sustainable economic development, as I said, it's driven by the innovation. But innovation can only succeed when the regulations is used as a catalyst, as an accelerator for the innovation.
And we've seen the technology, unfortunately, is always faster.
I mean, exactly. Look, we've seen in Europe last year, the Americans came out with a regulatory environment for the AI. The European followed suit with the regulatory environment. Then American backtracked. They said, you know what, we can't really, we rather call it maybe safeguarding. It's hard. How do you regulate? So that was the biggest challenge. Apart from that, there is no other challenge. And that's also an opportunity. Because for us in Africa, it means, and let me tell you this, it's a big opportunity, because what was once believed to be a drawback for African continent, that or not only African continent, less equipped countries, because I call more developed, I call it more equipped and less equipped, that Africa was a drawback and so on and so forth. But today we are all at the ground zero.
Yeah,
except only two nations. I'm talking perspective to technology. Digital transformation is not just another sector. It is the sector driving everything today. And we've been talking about that for the past 10, 15, 20 years. I think most of our decision makers, they're very conscious of the importance of technology.
I mean, it also brings a benefit from economical perspective. Don't forget.
Yeah, it is, of course, GDP contributions. I mean, you saw the recent report by PwC, which talks about $2.9 trillion by 2030.
Yeah.
And the GDP, that's a huge, that's a huge market, because usually we talk about the internet growth is $180 billion by 2025. And we have annual revenue of the operators maybe growing by maybe 100 million, 120 billion, sorry, 100 billion, 120 billion. And this guy saying, 2.9 trillion into the economy. It means, and we've been saying this since 2019, we said, the report was showing that time that 85% of the job by 2030 has not been created yet. And today we're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Today, only this year, we're going to have projection is about $97 million job around the world boosted by AI.
So it's all about unlocking the potential.
Yeah, it's an accelerator, and it's a reality. It is not the future. We are living the reality.
You mentioned earlier changing the mindset.
Yes.
So if you look at your role, you're in the lucky position because you're not somehow, let's say, connected with any kind of governmental election. So people change.
Yes.
Stakeholders change.
Yes.
So how difficult is it to, let's say, on one side you make progress, and then probably a government change with a complete different focus. How is this manageable within Smart Africa? And do you have any guidelines for that?
Yes, it's like we are on the plane, and the flight plan gets to change every time. And every time you have a flight plan, you're changing your flight plan every time, and you will wonder when are you going to get your destinations. That is a challenge because the government change, ministers change, regulators change, but we managed to know that the churn rate at the agencies level is actually much lower than it is at the government executive level. So we managed to onboard, whenever there's a new change, we onboard those responsible government parties, and we pick up the pieces and we move on. And you know what? We learn in the process.
Yeah.
We always learn in the process. Whenever there's a change, you learn in the process. But you see, the Smart Africa Alliance is an alliance of the willing. If you want to be somebody, you will be it. It basically means changes usually impact the rate of the progress. And we all know that because it's like you're starting from zero again. But we manage basically when new member state come on board, we bring them up to speed. And sometimes we even learn. What they learn is actually, they're not learning just the connectivity, they're learning now AI.
Yeah.
And this is very fascinating. You see, a few months ago when you and I, we used to talk about digital inclusions. Now we have something called now AI inclusions. You may well be digitally savvy, but you're completely ignorant in terms of AI.
Yeah.
So which is another gap
on
created.
many layers. On many layers.
Yes. So you see.
Yeah, AI is shaping the future of technology worldwide. I mean, we both can agree on that. And I would like to talk about with you what it means for Africa. So Smart Africa recently launched or announced that you're going to launch a AI council. Can you tell us a bit more? What is the idea behind? What was the reasoning?
Yes, the AI is making its move, and AI for Africa, for us, it means a lot. And if AI for Africa is still what I'm saying, it means inclusions, but this time it means a real social inclusions. I think there's a misunderstanding when you talk about inclusions in the, I don't want to say global north, inclusions in Europe and the West. It means something, inclusions in Africa. We really mean here the AI will bring a social inclusion, because to be included socially, it's basically for you to be able to interact with the government or private sector with your own language. No language barriers. You don't have to speak English. You don't have to speak Chinese. So you have to speak French. So for us to be able to make a great stride together, we have to have a council. As you know, Smart Africa, the board members are the head of the state. And we have below that, we have a steering committee, which is actually led by the ministers and the two co-chair, which is ITU and AU, and also some private sector. And we have a consultative organ, which are the ministers. If we really want to embrace and harness the AI, we have to put the AI on a fast track. That's the reason of creating a consultative organ like Africa AI Council, which is like a task force coming from the Council of ICT Ministers, together with the private sector driven, but all African driven, but the majority will be private sector, to be able to drive the initiatives such as AI for Africa. What does that actually mean? By looking at some of the fundamental pillars, we're talking about computing power. How do we make it together? By looking at the data set, how do we govern the data together? How do we do AI strategies together? And by looking also at algorithm, and how do we actually shape the future for our future generations together? So it's a necessity. It's not actually a luxury to have an AI Africa AI Council. It is a must. And it's only by doing together, because we know today, by looking at the fundamental blocks for the AI, no one country alone in Africa has all this element.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So we have to be together. So it has to be a council. It has to be a council for Africa, by African, by African. But it has to be a subset of a task force. It cannot be a standalone agency. It's not like we're creating another council of No, it's a work. It means work. The AI Council for Africa, it means a real work. It's a subset of the ICT, Council of ICT Ministers. Does it make sense? And we are going to launch it. We're finalizing the declaration that will take place during the upcoming summit for Global AI for Africa Summit in
Kigali, right?
In Kigali, 3rd and the 4th of April. Then we're taking it to the steering committee, which will take place there, and we'll announce the formations, and we'll come up with the 1-year plan during the Transform Africa Summit in July. So it's really fast.
All right. Oh, sounds exciting.
Yes, I'm excited too.
AI also raises concerns about replacing jobs. I mean, we've seen it in the industrialization through several, let's say, civilizations, countries over the last 200 years. Technology can go very fast. How do you see it when we look at the African continent? We have many countries who are suffering from high unemployment rates. So how can we ensure that AI is not replacing jobs, it's rather more accelerator to bring opportunities?
I like this question. That's why I'm smiling. How do you replace something that doesn't exist?
You got me.
Yes, in Europe, yes. We've seen this ever since the printing press started back in centuries. People say, that will be the end of the authors of the books because we're printing now something. And we've seen that when the rise of the how they call it, the shared economy, such as the Uber-like and such as the, so what I'm saying, the Uber-likes and economic model.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's taking the job of the traffic, taxi drivers and stuff like that. It happened to be in Africa, it's creating job. How do you replace something that doesn't exist? For the world, in fact, I will retract again.
Yeah.
AI will not replace job. people who adapt to the AI will replace people who do not adapt to AI. That's the fact of reality.
So, but then we have actually a fallback, because if you see what we had over the last years, where we said, okay, it's all about digital literacy, or people, let's say, should have courses, education, etc. Because the jobs who potentially could come now won't come. So the question is more to phrase it probably differently, are governments aware of that they should use it as an accelerator for the economy to help the people? Instead of just helping companies to probably create more revenue with less workforce.
Exactly. AI make us more efficient. It's about automation. If you know what you want from the AI, it enhances your capability. But also, if you don't know what you want from AI, it could make you more dumber. Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. So, again, it's fundamental. It can create more poor. It can create more rich. Then we need to know how to use it. The same thing applies to us. Civil society apply also to the government. It means how do we use the AI ethically to boost our economy faster, to allow us to get to the point where we couldn't get there faster. That's the whole point. It goes all the way back to fundamental of our educations, our pillars of education, and so on and so forth. It means you need to be creating a lot of young people who are AI savvy. With all due respect for people who do anthropology, history, geography. It's a new way of reimagining things. You see, the AI is not an add-on. No, don't get it wrong. You have to reimagine the world, how you can do it better.
I mean, there are a lot of people when I talk to even younger people, they're not using Google anymore. No. So they're just using their AI system, whatever it is, a ChatGPT, whatever.
It's more precise. And you said you will go to one Google page, to another page, to another. It's too slow for them. You know, it's even today, they use, I don't know, I don't remember last time I used a Google as the traditional Google page. No, because people don't have any time anymore. It's all about efficiency. So, yes, it will create a lot of jobs, but we need to know how to adapt it. 3 key elements is very important for the AI. I don't know if we'll get to that, which is really how to make it sustainable, how to make it ethical, how to make it inclusive.
So it's again, we need regulation. Because what I actually wanted to point out is, I personally believe in AI as an accelerator. I believe in it can enable and can bring people it can unlock potential in a huge way. In a huge way.
Absolutely.
But I'm just a bit concerned, how can the public sector move fast enough to pick up the pace with AI and make it probably in a smarter way useful for their own population?
Maybe we need to innovate the term that you actually use, regulation. I wouldn't use a regulation. I would say safeguard. Because regulations sometimes it may have a negative connotations. Regulate or sanctions. No. When you say safeguard, see how we can use it with a lot more safety. Yes, we need to put some safeguard around it, because at the end of the day, it has to be ethical. Because behind every algorithm, there is a bias. And what is the African bias? Because if you don't know how to use the AI, you're basically starting another new digital recolonization, but this time it's going to be infinite because it's driven by the data.
Makes sense. You made me thinking.
Absolutely. It's the bias. Then you might be using something that does not have an African bias. It's elsewhere bias. But the time you realize it's gone through generations and generations. This is the mindset. That is the digital colonizations. And what does that actually mean? But this time it's driven by data, and data is infinite. It's infinite. So we need to put some safeguard.
Just to close up the AI topic, AI also needs processing power, data centers on the continent, for the continent.
Yes.
How do you see that as a possibility for governments to invest more with the mindset, let's say, look into the future, there's the opportunities we could have? Or is it more like we say, okay, look, it's still too costly, so then we probably don't have even the infrastructure on site. So what do you think should happen from that perspective?
You know, I like these questions because, we've been programmed to believe that, AI is about all computing power. Right? Until the 27th of December, 2024, where we were made believe, we found out that you don't need to boil the entire ocean to have a cup of tea. It basically means there are other ways of optimization of the AI infrastructure. And we've seen this. And you will be surprised. Africa have over 50 countries. We have a total about 152 and 162 data centers. A traditional data centers use about between 5 megawatt and 10 megawatt. AI-powered data center is about 100 megawatt. If we're assuming that out of those 150 data centers in Africa, the total data centers in the world is around 8,000 something. Just do the math. 100 data centers with about between 5 and 10 megawatt. It basically means we can afford a data center running AI. I don't know if you do the math. You may think that we don't have the capability investment-wise, but we're already investing in data centers, over 100 data centers, using an average of between 5 to 10 megawatt. 10 megawatt into 10, that's the 1 gigawatt. How many data centers AI you can have? Starting 10 in Africa. But on the data center side, conventional, every government wants to have their own data center. That's the problem. We need to unite it. We need to federate it. That's the reason I said, on the AI world, no one can do it alone. You have to think together. So it is within our reach. I would not, today, there's no way I can believe that, in Africa, you know what, investment, we're not going to be able to do it. No. What just happened in between, if I can say, the frontier model of the AI today, which is well known, I'm not doing a publicity for any, I'm talking about open AI world and the deep sea. And with the distillation, with the pruning, with the algorithm optimization today, you don't have to have the most powerful AI, but you can have the AI which is useful for the society. You see what I'm talking about? So it is within our reach. Because with the energy level, I'm not saying all the... energy is a problem. It's a challenge in Africa.
I mean, the many data centers, to be straightforward, they have external energy generation, diesel generator.
And you know what? We should not really be undermining our continent. South Africa and Morocco, they make it to the top 500 of the top of supercomputing in the world. You know that. And if they two countries can make it, I think together, if we think together throughout the Africa AI Council, there is a lot we can achieve together than you actually
make sense. Thank you. Beyond AI, a strong digital identity is key to uniting Africa.
Absolutely.
What is the roadmap for creating a digital, let's say, unique ID for Africa?
The digital identity, it is the heart of digital transformation, an integrated market. And in that philosophy, one size fits all doesn't work. Each side should fit together. You have over 50 countries, over 50 identity systems. We should make sure technology is not the limit. With the policy harmonization between our countries on the cross-border issues, data flows, and so on and so forth, just like the one Smart Africa is doing, which is Smart Africa Trust Alliance. The Trust Alliance was created out of the digital ID flagship, which is led by Benin. And today we made a lot of strides, and we go into a pilot. We've identified a service provider last week to do the pilots after, of course, a tender, certain process. So we're going to do between Rwanda and Benin, where on the identity side, on the traveling, on the travel sector, because there are many use cases. The first use case between Benin and Rwanda will be someone with the Benin ID will leave Benin to come to Rwanda and go through the gate. This is how we can integrate. That's the digital. So that sits on the interoperability. It sits on the digital ID. It sits on the proper KYC together. I understand you're going to hit me with the statistic, of course, which is the invisible scandal. We have more than 450 million or 500 million people in Africa with no form of ID. But let me tell you, there is no digital transformation without digital ID. Because at the end of the day, it's about DPI, digital public infrastructure, identity, payment method, data sharing, and infrastructure.
Last time when we met in Barcelona, it was last year actually, you made me think when we talked about a united Africa. And since then, I was thinking about that because I never looked at it like that. Because you made a comparison to the US when you see a lot of states and altogether the United States of America.
Yes.
So, and I was thinking, do you think Africa can build despite our diversity? Because we're very diverse. Do you think we can create or develop kind of a feeling that we're African, so that this is an African identity, that we, you see, make America great again, or the land of hope of dreams, So there are a lot of phrases, or a lot of let's say identifications people have with other countries. But what do you think about Africa?
It is possible for one reason. You see, the regional economic communities, the regional blocks were not created for nothing. The culture are very similar in EAC. The cultures are very similar in ECOWAS. The cultures are very similar in the SADC. So do the market. The market, the law governing the markets are very similar. Yeah. Why don't we follow that with the digital? Let's follow, in the ECOWAS region has already, it's a ECOWAS region calls for a single market. You know that. The EAC has its own market. So let's go digital. When we go digital, it basically means now they're no longer regional economic blocks. SADC and ECOWAS and EAS. It means there's only one block, which makes a 1.4 billion population. So it is possible, as I said last time when I gave the examples, until now it's in the United States of America, every single state have their own law. Yeah. But the laws are integrated. As I said to you, it's not necessary to have a one-size-fit-all, but each size should fit together. So we have a different law in those different regional economic communities, but we are integrated, we are interoperable. I can understand you. Yeah. That makes a difference between making a payment from Cape Town to Cairo and making a payment from Djibouti to Nouadhibou and Mauritania. Seamlessly. Technology is not the limit. It's a political will. And that will is there.
I mean, we have to through actually several areas, or I see several layers as a problem. If I see it in Africa, if you want to travel, for example, from Cape Town to Kenya, it's easily $1,000, to fly. Compared, if you see that in Europe, you can fly from the Eastern Europe to the Western Europe for probably 50 euros.
50 euros, yes.
So you can travel without borders. But it's very difficult for someone from Nigeria, for example, to come to a trade show in South Africa, vice versa, probably. So we have a lot of, let's say, obstacles. And I always think that this is a big, big issue. Because how can cultures exchange? How can we understand each other more, even though we are diverse, when we cannot come together as a nation?
As you give the example to Europe, you can fly from east to the west. But don't forget that you can do that by train also. So why don't we start with the train in Africa? What prevents our borders, our countries that are facing, what prevents that to be linked by the railroad? I think this is already happening in some of the West African country and East African country and Southern African. Because that means the real economic integrations that goes beyond digital. Digital can integrate nation faster because there's no boundaries. But let's start with that. But also, let's not make a mistake. It is a huge challenge because the huge challenge says it means access to resources. It's a fundamental issue everywhere. You see, that is the difference when we said in Smart Africa, our manifesto number 4, when we said private sector first. It basically means we want to appeal to we want to make those countries attractive to investor. It basically where Africa is in for business. When you talk about the huge bricks and mortar style of investments, roads, bridges, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Digital is saying, I need the banking services, I don't need the banks. I need healthcare services, I don't need healthcare, hospital. I need the educations, I don't need schools. Yeah. So what will take us where we want to be faster than ever is the digital. African integration is the mass.
Yeah, and of course, none of this happens without a strong public and private sector partnership.
No, it never happened. Yeah, the private sector sits at the heart of it.
When we look at Africa, and we also talked about that a few times, it's an extremely young population. Majority is below 30. Do you think the public sector fully realize its responsibility in shaping their future and to create opportunities for them?
The public sector is very aware. Even if you're not aware, if you're smart enough to think that Africa gained from 1980 to 2025, within 45 years, Africa gained 1,050 million population. Go back to the history, you will find out that we had an exponential growth of over 1 billion people in just a matter of 45 years.
Right.
That will get you thinking. Then you need to be thinking, your educational infrastructure, did it grow the same way? No. Hospital, same way? No. Did it create a job? Same rate? No. So it must be an issue. What keep, of course, our head of state awake at night? It's a job creations. They are conscious. They know about it. It's not a problem that can be solved within the day. You have to have an agile mindset. You have to deliberately making some laws to be able to create something out of it. I mean, you don't sit down and say, I'm going to be creating job. It takes time to plan to see a fruitions. And we're talking about SDG, which comes to an end by 2030. It means it's even put the challenge higher because the World Bank report says between now to 2030, Africa need to create about 200 million jobs. But with the AI, it could be possible.
So the awareness is here and the political will as well. One other topic, high taxes on mobile and connectivity sectors is really something what affects economies because operator probably cannot innovate or grow as he should be. So do you think that governments can balance the revenue needs and also seeing on the other side, how can we enable the progress?
In my view, it's not like if government can balance, but government should balance. You see, it's very simple. And we worked on this together with the UNICA, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the report came out last month. I will be sharing it with you. I don't know if you know about the report. We'll be talking about a report in Barcelona here. It shows when the government reduces taxes, the users of cell phone increase. Ultimately, the government collect more taxes. When you increase taxes on data or even on the handset, you will end up with less users. Then you will end up with yes. You will end up with the contributions of the ICT to the GDP will actually shrink. So that model, the report talks about that model, the elasticity model, where do you strike a balance between higher taxes? Because we have not the taxes. If you look at today, there's the VAT taxes and there's also ICT specific taxes. I mean, some country you can add up easily about 38 to 39% taxes on the sector. But this is a nascent sector. So you're basically killing the baby at the birth.
But it's also a big revenue stream. The mobile sector is a huge revenue stream. Look at the latest reports about Nigeria. It's mind-blowing.
True. But here's the thing. When you reduce taxes as a government and you decided full path through, when you say full path through, it means the reduction of the taxes goes to the consumer. The internet becomes cheaper, the telecom becomes cheaper, more user, government collects more money, right?
Yeah.
If you do that, it benefits the MNO because the revenue will grow. But if you decide to reduce the taxes and there is no pass-through to consumer, it means the tax reduction is only at the MNO level, then they maybe will appeal them to make more investments in the country.
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm saying all in all, by reducing taxes, the government will never lose. What we need to do, where the decisions are making about fiscal policy on the ICT, most of our ministers of digital economy are not present in the room. There has to be a collaborative effort between the finances, budgets, and ministers of ICT to know exactly how to strike a balance between what can be called too much tax, what can be called too less tax. If you miss that window, then you will see that the entire model that the digital economy should be contributing positively to the GDP, it will stagnate.
Yeah.
So you need to know the balance.
But that's actually not the rocket science. That just needs a bit more common sense. Or am I wrong?
No, you're right. It's the common sense. When it doesn't make sense, use the common sense. But the problem is, or the challenge occur, that when those decisions are being made, the telecom sector are not being consulted.
So they're not making decisions on a holistic view.
No, exactly. Or it is not a data-driven.
Yeah.
The decision is not made. And let me tell you, I'm working in my past as a special advisor, of course, of head of the state. When there's a treasury pressure, all the sectors are equal. We just say, we need this amount of money.
Yeah.
So and you can say the telco, you may say today, everyone said telco is making a lot of money, but they're paying a lot of taxes too. So the first thing you will think about, which sector actually has a direct connection with the consumer collect on a single day basis? It's the telco. So they're a very easy target. The very easy target at the same time, by doing so, you may be killing your own economy because tell me today, I said this statistic before, mobile money transaction about 2022, it was $822 billion US transaction value. But if you look at it, for that same industry, we're saying by 2025, we'll be at 180 billion in terms of broadband penetration revenue being made by broadband. It means there's a lot of value added to be. This value added was created with that network. So it basically means by balancing those taxes, we can actually make much more. We won't have a digital inclusion problem. We will not have a financial inclusion problem because everything is accessible. Does it make sense? I know.
No,
it's a big debate, I know.
No, it makes fully sense. I just would like to see the change.
Well, I think for us at Smart Africa is to basically we're working with the Rwanda and Nigeria, and we're going to be creating, of course, in line with our commitment with the GSMA, what we call guideline for ICT sector taxations, which will, because the report over 50 countries were assessed, and we look at the champion country, how they were able to do it, and you can see the impact. And we're going to be basically sharing the best practice from practical practice from an African standpoint, and advocating for the rest of the countries to follow through, because we want our economy to grow, but we can't do it with too much taxes every time.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Okay.
Private sector. How do you see the private sector accelerating the digital transformation process?
We have no choice. The private sector are the bedrock of digital transformations in Africa. We all have aspirations to be a Silicon Valley, but people forget that the Silicon Valley was supported over 50 years by the United States government. So who's our Afro champion?
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I learned a lesson.
Yes.
Crazy. 50 years.
Yes. Or more than 50 years, the Silicon Valley have been supported by the U.S. government, either policy-wise or by pure funds. And if America is America today, because it's what they call, it's a risk capital country.
Yeah.
That we don't have that mentality.
Yeah.
It basically means you can sit in your basement, you create something out of nothing, and you get $1 billion, someone will invest in it, knowing that they may lose that money.
Yeah.
That's only in America. But to be able to get to that point, the private sector, the U.S. has to support more than 50 years. We need to have that mentality. We already have some Afro champion. I'm not going to do any publicity here, but we need to trust them and we need to support them. And unfortunately, I know fiscal policy in certain countries not, but this is not in favor of the private sector. But today, look at today what is happening in AI world. All these big frontier models, they're all private sector, backed by their what? By their government. You don't see a government leading it. You see a private sector leading it. So that tells you the bedrock of digital transformation, even the success of a country. We need to support our private sector. We need to create a lot of Afro champions. No doubt about it.
Well said.
Okay.
When we look at digital skills, can you share a bit more about Smart Africa's Digital Academy?
Yes, Smart Africa Digital Academy, of course, as I said, digital transformation is first of all transformation from mindset. In order to be transformed, you have to be informed. In order to be transformed, you have to be informed. Most of the time, we assume that the decision makers, they know. When you, as I said, we're acting like we're on the airplane where the flight plan is changing every time. Whenever there is a new player, you assume immediately that that new player knows what you're talking about. And the reality is not true.
Yeah.
So we had to have something we call a track for decision makers. So Smart Africa Digital Academy last year, we deliver up to last year for the past 2 years, we trained more than 10,000 decision makers on emerging technology. Then we created the youth chapter, which is to target the youth And we're targeting also advanced skills, which are like advisor of the minister, advisors of the president, because you need to be informed. Once your decision makers are informed, things go, even the public reform goes easier.
And the governments must be surrounded by competence within their own teams.
And we're doing that with our, more than 22 partners, and our main partners on the Smart Africa Digital Academy is the World Bank program that we work on, the WARDIP.
All right. Very interesting. Connectivity remains a challenge.
Will always remain a challenge, even in the developed countries.
Exactly. I just want to briefly touch base on satellite connectivity, because we see satellite connectivity. I don't want to make any advertisements, obviously, but we have some disruption on the continent lately. Even it's getting more and more. So how do you think can satellite connectivity help to bridge Africa's digital divide?
Yes, I'll be bold. You're talking about LEOs. Well, we had GEOs, MEOs, and LEOs. The geostationary satellite are the further satellite used to give a coverage to radio and televisions, and they were suited for connectivity in the backhaul sense. And we have now the LEOs, which are low Earth orbit satellite, and we have those constellation more than 5,000. So I'm not going to say names here. In the entire connectivity of the continent, of the world itself, we have something called coverage gap, usage gap. When you look purely at a satellite with respect to coverage gap, with the availability of those LEO satellites on the continent, I can simply tell you there's no coverage issue in Africa. Because the satellite can cover it faster than the fiber. Even not the fiber. There are certain areas where the fiber will never reach. But the satellite can cover it. Particularly the LEOs, all the satellites are the same, but the LEOs can do a good coverage. But that's not the point. That will address only what? The coverage gap. Okay, I am covered. Am I using it?
You need the infrastructure to use it.
You need infrastructure to use it. Not only that, it has to be affordable. Because today, if you see today, only 46% of the African populations are connected, but how many African populations are covered? It's close to 85%. There is a proper broadband, mobile, connected investment is made, but people are not using it because it's too expensive. So yes, for satellite connectivity in the LEO, but it has to be affordable. And affordability is not just price of the internet, it's the price of the device. It is the development of the content in the local context. It's a cyber hygiene. So the LEO, yes. If I want to talk about the coverage, yes. The satellite is very important, but you have to strike a balance between the fiber and the satellite, because not everything can be a satellite and not everything can be a fiber. There are areas, exactly. But the growth and the proliferation of the low Earth orbit today and on our continent, it actually allow Africa to claim we may end the coverage challenge just in a few days. Because if it has a satellite coverage, it means it's connected. But does not solve the challenge alone.
So we come back to the beginning.
To the beginning again. Look at the accessibility and affordability.
All right.
Yes.
Looking ahead, Transform Africa Summit 2025 is on the horizon.
Yes.
What can we expect from this year's event in Kigali?
This year's events, I believe the theme is Innovate Locally, Impact Globally. AI for Africa. So we're expecting this in July 22nd to 24th. And of course, you're invited. We can have another podcast there. And we're expecting it to be big. I think you were attended in Zimbabwe last time. Last year, we were supposed to do it in Kenya. It didn't happen. But this year, we're expecting maybe close to 6,000 people. That's what we're expecting, even actually more.
Nice.
But we are expecting that the AI to be taking really big chunk about that, because no matter what you do, AI is an accelerator for the digital transformation. In fact, we've been preaching connectivity, innovations, and transformations. So connectivity with these challenges, innovation with these challenges, transformation with these challenges. But the AI is a practical case that can drive the digital economy faster. So we cannot afford not talk about AI. That's the reason the theme is AI for Africa. Innovate locally, impact globally. And you're all invited.
We will be there for sure.
Thank you.
And I will come back regarding the podcast. If you had my last question. So if you had a wish list for prosperous Africa, and there would be 3 things you could change immediately, what would be the 3 things on your wish list?
Regulation, education, transformation. You can't do none of the 2 without a proper regulation. You can't do anything if you regulate properly. If people are not educated properly, it doesn't work. You may regulate, you may educate. If you don't use those 2 elements to transform, the society means nothing. That's my 3 word.
So it actually almost reflects the pillars of Smart Africa.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks for your time. It was a very nice conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the partnership. And
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.